Hello, everybody. Welcome in to another episode of the PHNX Suns Podcast. I'm Lindsay. That's Saul. That's Gerald. Espo. How you guys doing?
Good. Welcome to Jeff in the chat, Marco in the chat, Matrix in the chat, Eli and Dagoon. Thank you all for being here today.
And Brian.
Oh, well, I don't know about Brian.
We love the early birds. Welcome in. Happy to see you all here in the chat already. Hopefully this one sparks some good debate. We already got it started.
Fight on this.
Dagoon said, I wouldn't be a Suns fan if Pippen came here. Fighting, throwing up, just looking at the thumbnail. What, were y'all out of pics of Robert Horry? Oh, boy.
Why?
We're in for it, you guys. I can't wait for these two to go at it. I already know these two are going to fight later on in the show. So buckle up, everyone.
You sure Dagoon ain't Michael or Laura Pippen there? Like, is there something we don't know about Dagoon?
No
Isn't it
comment.
Larsa?
Yes.
I don't
Larsa?
know. Whatever.
Larsa.
I think it's Larsa.
No comment.
Whichever one was with MJ's
Put some
MJ's
respect on her name.
son. So.
Facts. Exactly. Get it together, Espo. Well, today we're going to start off the show looking at some prospects that have been rumored to or confirmed to have been had a workout with the Phoenix Suns ahead of the 2024 NBA draft. What a time, you guys. How exciting. I do miss the days when the Suns were a little more open about their pre-draft workouts and allowed us to participate.
Yeah.
Ask
Yep.
them questions about the prospect, ask the prospects about the workout themselves and what they're feeling. But
I miss those days a lot as a media person who would be there every day. That would be nice.
Can't say James Jones wasn't there if you don't know if he wasn't there.
Oh, come on.
I'm kidding, James. I'm kidding.
Like I said earlier, it's one guy working them out, just one coach, nobody else there. We can't let the people know.
And see, this is why they don't let me in anymore.
Look, I liked the access, but I always found the interviews with the guys that had just worked out so awkward because you're like, well, would you like to be in Phoenix? And every one of them goes, yeah, I love the workout, the facilities, I've enjoyed being in the city for a day. It's a little hotter than I thought it might be. And like every guy gave you the same answer.
But those were the like dumb questions that every person asks. Like there were better questions. I really like that process because you get to know like what guys have been working on through their like workout process with different teams and like where they kind of see themselves fitting in. And there were fun ways to like cover those things.
Yeah.
But
if you're not creative, then you probably struggled in those things.
I love that Gerald's asking all these serious things, and I was like, hey, man, so Steven Adams, this is going to be your first time really living in America for a while. What are you looking forward to? I'd like to try a chocolate peanut butter
those are great
cup.
too. Those are great too.
But those are the moments, like, let's be honest. Early on in Giannis's career, that's what people lived for.
Oh, yeah.
Was Giannis tweeting about trying something new for the first
They
time.
still eat that shit up.
I
At this
know,
point,
it's
he's been in
great.
there
His
for-
dad jokes.
Yeah.
It's absolutely great. All right, well, let's go ahead and dive into our first prospect here. Jalen Tyson, guard out of Cal, 6'5", maybe 6'7", depending on who you ask. 215-ish pounds in the 23-24 season, averaged 19.6 points per game, 6.8 rebounds, 3.5 assists, shooting 46.5% from the field.
He's a good player. He's a good player. I wouldn't say he's gonna blow the doors off of anybody, but he needs a little bit of development because he does struggle in like spot shooting. I thought this year the chances I got to see him play were obviously against Arizona, and in those games I was not very impressed. I didn't think that he held up very well, but he had other games where he did, and I thought basically across the gamut, he's a good player. He likes to pick and roll. But in terms of spot up shooting, he struggled, especially, ironically enough, everything above the corners of the three, the break. He struggled more shooting percentage wise than he did in the corners for whatever reason. And then like outside of that, like I thought, as a guard, and he wasn't their primary ball handler, but he was one of them. His assist percentage was kind of lower than you'd like. And for a guy that is trying to find a way onto a team like this who has, deep playoff run aspirations, then you're looking for somebody that can be a little bit more suitable all around and hit those open shots. And I don't know if he's really that kind of guy yet.
Yeah, so in doing my research on some of these guys, it's weird dusting off the old draft analysis knuckles after 4 years of not having a first round draft pick. But he's interesting to me if you're curious about his range, like based on the mock drafts that I looked at, he was number 26, number 30, number 33, number 39, and number 28. And that's everything from Yahoo to The Ringer to ESPN, The Athletic, all these different mocks. So he's somewhere in this kind of range. 22 feels like maybe it's a little high, but you never know if the Suns are going to trade up, if they're going to trade down, what they might do in the drafts. But he's a guy that he kind of plays bully ball in terms of being able to get to the basket, which is a good thing. But he is one of the frequent complaints about his game that kept coming up was that he tries to squeeze passes into tight windows. He's a little too reckless sometimes with the turnovers, and he doesn't have like an explosive first step. So he's big and he's strong enough to make up for that, to use his length and athleticism, but he's not going to like beat guys off the dribble in the NBA, which is a potential problem there. So interesting prospect, but not one that I'm necessarily excited about at that pick.
Yeah, I don't need to double down on guys that are good at throwing away the basketball. And if that's one of the key points here. I think I'm probably good on that front, because at 22, if you're keeping that pick, you have to make an impact, right? Mm-hmm. You can't afford to take a project or miss on it. So yeah, I'm not going to get a guy that may play right into what the problems were last year.
Mm-hmm.
This is the part where we insert "It's all downhill from here."
Oh boy,
is that where we drop that song? Just kidding, we'd get flagged for it.
I love that we're hating on these kids who have never played a bit in the league.
Well,
they all suck after this.
I think specifically when talking about the 22nd pick, because everybody else that we're going to talk about that has worked out for the Suns so far is either not on a lot of the draft boards yet or way further back than 22. Now, that doesn't mean the Suns aren't working on some things to maybe pick up some picks later on in the draft. We'll see. But next up, we've got Bronny James, of course, out of USC, 6'4", 210-ish pounds. In the 2023-24 season, he averaged 4.8 points per game, 2.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, shooting 36.6% from the field. And of course, you'll remember, he's only working out with the Suns and the Lakers as of right now, and maybe another team or two.
Again, we talked about it at length last week about his opportunities. He's good at getting to the rim. For his size and his physicality, I think he's really good at attacking the rim when he's decisive. The problem is obviously he showed you that he was a freshman last year, and a freshman that came off of 2 months of a break to try and get his health in order. And so he would get caught in between taking a shot or passing oftentimes, especially when he penetrated the lane, if he was not assertive enough. His outside shooting could use a little bit more polishing and more consistency. And overall, just as a playmaker, there was times where he kind of got lost, which is a typical freshman thing that you see in college. It's not that big of a deal. But the times that you look at him and you're like, ooh, you know what? I kind of like that, is when they did run some pro set style stuff, because you could tell he was familiar with it and there was a comfortability with it. So when they would run the Princeton set over at USC, he would come off screens and he knew exactly when he was ready, what to look for to be ready to shoot, get his body right. And a lot of times he would cash in on those opportunities. So you liked what you saw the one time this season when he did not get substituted out, or Boogie Ellis was like their big player. He was a fifth-year senior, and he played behind him quite often. The one time Boogie Ellis didn't play, he actually started, and he had a really good first half against Arizona at Arizona. So there's things that you can build off of. It's just that young potential. You just don't know how it's going to play out.
Do you think he's undervalued now, though, because of anybody would have struggled with the hardship that he went through leading into that season at USC? Do you think he's undervalued because of that and how he played, where he might have more potential.
Even before then, I always thought that he needed at least 2 years in college.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like he's physically and mentally ready to play in the NBA right now. But I could be wrong. I just felt like he needed at least 2 years.
Yeah, it feels like, I mean, he is a second round prospect that could go in the first round, depending on if you ask the Lakers or the Suns or some other team that's willing to take a flyer. But like all of these mock drafts have him in the 50s for the most part. Like that's kind of what he is. And if you are drafting him at 22, it's because you have certain assurances behind the scenes. Let's be frank. Like he's 6'4" in shoes. He's 6'1.5" without shoes. Like I don't understand why they have the measurements with and without, because you play.
No,
I mean he's not as tall, even in shoes. He's not 6'4". Like
Okay.
that's
He has
that was
lifts.
a
That's
No.
what
was
they
a
said on the
slightly
internet.
it was a generous listing by USC on that.
definitely playing platforms on that one.
But like
Air Force Ones. That's
yeah.
what he's rolling out with.
he's a guy that can get to the rim but doesn't finish well there. He did not shoot the ball well at USC, but his form is really good, and it translated well at the draft combine when I think he hit 19 of 25 shots in that one drill. That really impressed a lot of scouts who kind of thought that the shooting is actually one of his more bankable skills offensively, but the problem is he's undersized to play the 2-guard spot, and he doesn't have the skill set of a point guard. So even with that stout build that he has, like offensively, he's going to have to find his role, and defensively is where he can, maybe crack a rotation down the line, because defense is what's going to get him on the court. He has great anticipation, positioning, really quick hands. He's good at getting steals and deflections, that type of thing. So that's kind of going to be the skill that he needs to bank on if he wants to work his way into a rotation early in his career.
There better only be two ways they draft him. If you trade for a second-round pick, or because it means LeBron. Otherwise, I think it's too risky to go that at 22 with your aspirations. So.
Yeah.
Brian in the chat said he almost died, and y'all want him to be prime Magic.
No, that's why we said he should be in college for another year, probably.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
All right, next up, we've got Trent Flowers of the Adelaide 36ers. Does that bring back some good memories and thoughts there?
No.
He is 6'8" 200-ish pounds. He's 19 years old. And last year he averaged 5.5 points per game, 3.1 rebounds, 0.6 assists, and 0.2 steals. He did have a few injuries, and he is very young, 19, of course. But, he can knock down threes. He can drive to the rim. He's just a little unpolished when it comes to those things.
I didn't see him on a ton of draft boards, to be honest. I think he was number 50 on Yahoo and 34 on the Ringer, and that was all that I could find on him on those. But the comparison that came up a couple of times was Kelly Oubre, with the way that he likes to attack the basket, but can sometimes get tunnel vision. Well, see, you say that, but Kelly Oubre has like a 10-year career, so let's not just and he played great for the Sixers this year.
You're just jealous of his hair.
Let's not. When we're doing draft comparisons, I hate when guys like get compared to a player who's just a decent role player, and people are like,
No.
I know that's what I'm saying.
That's not why I laugh.
Why?
I laugh because I always find it funny that when they're like, oh, he plays like X, and it's always the same color guy. It's always like, oh, light skin, curly hair. Kelly Oubre. There it is.
Well, they're just like,
That's exactly who he reminds me of.
He plays like that LeBron James guy.
I'll give you another one. NBA.com said, quote, at times he can look like Jaylen Brown, but other times he can look like Corey Brewer. So
is that
there's
just
two
how
more
he does
for
his
you.
hair?
Driving wings.
There you go.
I'm just saying, when we compare draft prospects to players who have carved out established careers, we shouldn't shit on that because of the comparison. Like,
yeah, Espo.
I'm just saying.
Look, I get it. I also don't think it's, and I'm not blaming you on that.
No.
I don't think it's fair whenever they compare these guys to somebody, because then fans inevitably are like, well, I expect that out of him. And then, a lot of times they turn into completely different kind of players.
Right.
Like,
It should be shades of not this is who this is going to be. But yeah, he's a guy that puts his head down. He drives to the rim. He has some good bursts there. He does embrace contact getting to the rim. And he likes to run the floor in transition for easy lobs, that type of thing. So he's got some athleticism to him, but also similar to Kelly Oubre, he kind of gets tunnel vision and takes some bad shots. And I think someone pointed out that he made under 50% of his layups. This was in a more physical league that doesn't call a lot of fouls at the rim, but still something to something that needs to improve.
Yeah,
50% of you thought Dirk
right.
was frustrated.
that does bode well for Lindsay because just like Kelly, she probably wants to hit this guy in the mouth with the mic. Yeah,
it was
an accident. All right, next up we got Fardaws Amick out of Cal, a forward, 6'11" 245 pounds in the 2023-24 season, averaged 14.5 points per game, 11 rebounds per game, 2.1 assists, and shot 46.4% from the field.
This is all I'm going to say about this guy is if you really like slow guys, if you really like suspect play around the rim, we've already got one of those guys.
I was going to say
on the
somebody
team.
said that his comparison was Nurse.
Yeah, and I'll say like if we're going to take a flyer on a player, I'd much rather go with like a guy like Zach Edey than this player because at least Zach Edey has shown you he can be dominant down low in the post and he can block shots and play decent defense at a higher level than what he played in the Pac-12. And no disrespect to the Pac-12, but they only had one good team in the whole conference, so it's like yeah, I'm good.
Fardaws. Wasn't that the name of the Lord in Shrek?
Farquaad.
Oh, okay.
Lord Farquaad. I like how that's you're a bit of an
I hate draft time. I'm just gonna be honest.
I know. It's fair.
We can tell you feel uncomfortable right now.
Just hate it.
Oh, I hate it. You know what's the fun fact about him? He's 25 years old.
Yeah.
Then James is taking him. Remember how old Cam was?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, this is a guy that I think he led the WAC in rebounding or all of the NCAA in rebounding a couple years ago. He's a good rebounder. He was 2-time WAC Defensive Player of the Year, but, he was in college for 5 or 6 years, basically. He's a little old. If you get a second-round pick and you want to take a flyer, sure, but this guy was not on any mock draft that I could.
He's definitely he would be a good free agent candidate in terms of undrafted free agent.
And maybe that's what some of these are looking at.
That's what I'm wondering because they got to fill a whole G League roster too. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. Okay, last one for now. Power forward Jalen Williams out of Auburn. 6'8" 240 pounds. He'll be 24 in July, so also a little bit older, 4 years in college. He averaged 12.4 points per game, 4.4 rebounds, 1.9 assists, shooting 39.5% from deep on 2.5 attempts per game.
We have let James know this isn't either of the guys in OKC, right?
I believe so.
Okay. Can we all just agree? And I'm speaking for everyone else because I'm already not going to be participating in the repopulation pool. Can we all not name kids Jalen moving forward?
What the fuck? What are you talking about?
Can we revisit the way you phrased that?
I'm not.
I mean, God, you could have just said that.
I just wanted it to
my
sound
God,
a little extra.
Sound like we were gonna euthanize people.
I like
and
to
shit.
be extra
Jesus.
when I say things.
Her
Can we all
thought
just
is-
maybe put a pin in the name Jalen for a little while?
Can we go back to your overall philosophy of fuck them kids, like when it comes to your draft and population?
The repopulation pool. I don't want to swim in that pool.
We're over the second apron. No more repopulation pool for you. All right.
Yeah. So Jalen, I don't know. I mean, he gets to the rim a lot. I think he took more than 40% of his shots at the rim, which we need more guys to put pressure on the rim. But another guy that has not appeared on any of the mock drafts that I found, so probably more of a G League or second round guy.
Interesting.
G League Suns are going to be interesting.
Yeah.
I want to say I saw him at 70 something.
On a big board. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Everyone that talked about him said he's projected to be a quality role player in the NBA, but definitely not a first round pick.
I didn't see him in any second round mocks either.
Yeah.
Well, if he's projected 70, that's why.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for now.
Yes.
And I'm glad that we all have agreed Jalen is no longer a name that we're going to participate in for 10 years. We'll just put a pin in that one. But what we are going to be participating in is the PHNX events that are coming up here in the near future. We've got one happening next week, and that is the trivia night out at Chicken and Pickle. No, 2 weeks from now. That's right. Well, because next week I'm on vacation, so I think next week.
Yeah,
Right,
next week is
She's
the Mercury,
already-
next week is the Mercury takeover.
Next
2
week
weeks
that
from
Lindsay works.
Exactly, exactly. That's on June 20th, the chicken and pickle. Then we've got the Mercury takeovers happening as well. We
Next
got 2
week.
of these. These are going to be a blast. You guys know takeovers are always a great time.
Always.
We got Aces next week,
Yep.
right? So that'll
Yep.
be fun.
Oh, that'll be a
Little
good one.
Kelsey Plum in the building. That'll be
Mhm.
fun to watch.
Plus, these all come with a pregame party where food and drinks are included. So you're not going to find a better time out at a Mercury game or a better deal. You can get your tickets over at gophnx.com. And if you're a diehard, you get a discount because when you're a diehard, you get discounts on all of our events. So head on over to gophnx.com and become a diehard today and get your tickets to the Mercury takeovers, as well as check the events tab because there's a whole bunch of fun things happening over the next couple of months. And a lot of those events, you're going to need some Shady Rays, especially if you're heading out to Miami with the PHNX Cardinals crew. So make sure you look good and your eyes are protected with a great pair
Hell yeah.
of Shady Rays.
So hell yeah.
Yes, we are talking about quality shades that are built to last, premium polarized sunglasses that will not break the bank. They're an independent sunglass company offering a world-class product, and they've got a style or a shape or a color that will fit anybody's style. Like if you want to match your favorite Suns team and their jerseys, I'm sure they've got glasses that will help that, whether it's Cardinals, D-backs, RIP Coyotes, but Shady Rays has you covered. I know, right? I'm sorry. Was that
You want to go to that funeral? They got sunglasses for you.
They do. Plus, if your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, you don't have to worry because Shady Rays has the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by their lost or broken replacements. And exclusively for you, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. You can head to shadyrays.com, use code PHNX for 35% off polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people now.
Wow.
Last time it was 250,000. So, in a very short amount of time, they've added 50,000 5-star reviews. These are good glasses.
Yeah. Lindsay, the next group we're talking about, you have certified them as corn stars, right? It's our friends over at Illegal Pete's. You want to get double the corn when you go there is what Lindsay tells you.
There's no way.
So
It's got the juice.
Hey,
It's got the
hey
juice.
now. Illegal Pete's, your place for burritos, buddies, beer, and corn.
Not what I was expecting at all. I would never have guessed
She was
Espo to lead into that with that.
What?
You said what? Illegal Pete's has the Mexican food that you want. That's the point here. They got an unbelievable menu. I love their burritos. I also love, the nachos. I'm a big nacho guy.
You know you love one other thing. What's your staple?
I couldn't
Say it.
Quesadilla.
There you go.
I do love the quesadilla over there at Illegal Pete's. It is
What's wrong with
fantastic.
quesadilla?
Nothing. That's just his
Why are
favorite.
you so afraid to say it?
Because Saul always gives me a
I've
hard
kind
time.
of shamed him.
He should-
Like
because I
we'll
order
go
a
to
lot
like
of
Steak
quesadillas.
44 and he'll, can I get the quesadilla?
Okay, that's not true. I'm not like Johnny Venerable making an ass of myself at a steakhouse. No, yeah, you can cut that one.
Shots.
I go to Illegal Pete's and I do enjoy the quesadilla. I love the piping hot queso. I love the guacamole. They got everything and anything, and they got a hell of a bar too. You got to enjoy the custom cocktails and the beers there, and they got a fantastic deal. Their legendary sound check deal. So if you're coming to the Mercury game, save that ticket stub after you go with us. Then head down to Tempe, and you're going to get a draft beer or house margarita for just 1 penny. That's right, 1 penny. Legal Pete's wants to celebrate with you, whether it's a pregame or postgame party. They got you covered on all your game day needs. Must purchase an adult entree to redeem Illegal Pete's Soundcheck deal. Your go-to spot for burritos, buddies, and beers. That is Illegal Pete's, your corn stars.
All right, let's go ahead and dive into this conversation we're about to have here.
Let's go.
We are going to tier
Dear God,
top
help us all.
Suns draft misses today. And our 5 tiers are going to be franchise-altering mistake, a massive draft bust, coulda, shoulda, wouldas, splitting hairs, and who? Who that is?
I can't wait.
Who dat?
Y'all ready?
I am not ready for this.
Oh man.
Let's start with Dragon Bender. He was taken 4th overall in 2016, taking over guys like Jamal Murray, Buddy Hield, Domantas Sabonis.
I still own property on Bender Island. It's deserted now, but I actually have an autographed rookie card of Dragan Bender at the home. I think it's a massive bust. I don't think there were enough guys that were surefire things that you passed up on. When it came to him, you did have expectations, but you also knew you were taking a chance on a kid that hadn't played college ball in the United States or anything. I'm gonna put him at massive bust.
That's where I had him. I had him in the middle of my massive bust people. Like I feel like he was definitely a bust. To take him number 4 overall, I honestly think that taking him 4 overall is part of the reason why they did what they did in 2018, just because of the residual PTSD from that pick. And he was only here for 3 seasons. But like you said, like Jamal Murray and Buddy Hield were kind of the only 2 guys that were right in that draft range that you look at, like that were in consideration that high. And I don't know, I can't put him any higher than that just because he was a draft bust. He absolutely was.
I also feel like the Suns let him down as much as he let them down. They had no development program with these young guys, and he was a guy that probably needed that more than other prospects. There was a lot of raw talent there, but I think there was too much expected of him too fast, and you didn't have that support system around him.
So Leo in the chat said Bender said if he was drafted somewhere else, he would have had a better career, with a laughing face emoji. But low key, Leo and Espo, you guys are right.
You were there in the building. You tell us.
No, I 100% agree. I feel like they drafted, and Bender was one of the younger draft picks as well. You got to remember, I'm pretty sure he was 18 when he joined the Suns.
He was a project.
And then you put so much emphasis on them, and you expect them to be like a guy like Devin Booker, right? Who maybe gets 1 year of work, and then all of a sudden you can put all that weight on there. Not everybody can do that. And you just have these huge, crazy expectations, and you don't necessarily have the support that you should, or it's the wrong type of support. Let's be honest. Maybe that could have played into it as well. I think in that whole period of a lot of these draft picks that we're going to talk about, you got to put a little bit of the blame on the Suns organization.
Oh yeah, I think for a portion of these guys, you could say the same thing. I mean, the organization let them down, and they had a lot of misses internally, especially. I would say I would agree with you guys. I think that he was definitely in that second tier. I just remember the first time I got up here, and I was working for Fox Sports Arizona, and I went to go cover the first preseason game. They were playing the Kings, and Dragan Bender came down the court, and he airballed his first shot, and then he threw the next 2 passes over the head of everybody all the way into the second deck, and then the 4th time down he airballed another one and he got taken out of the game. And I was like, and I tweeted from the Fox Sports Arizona account, man, that was the worst 3 minutes of basketball I've ever seen by a single player.
Ow.
And then I got talking to the next day because we were partners with the Suns.
I mean, yeah, that was rough.
I didn't know we weren't allowed to say those things.
Not from
I'm like, hey,
that wasn't the brand voice, so
from the main.
Yeah, so
we are slandering Arizona.
Yeah, so we'll put Bender in the massive bust. I will say, as much as like the Suns failed him, I don't think he would have had a better career if he'd have been drafted elsewhere. I don't think it would have been substantially different. Like,
I don't know though. I mean, we did have Point Bender for that one summer league, and it was a thing.
Stop it. Stop it.
All right, next up, we've got Tim Perry, 7th overall in the 1988 draft, taking over guys like Rex Chapman, Ronnie Cycli, and Rod Strickland.
This is firmly in the who category for me.
I don't know. I think it's splitting hairs to me. Like I feel like there are a few names. Like Rex Chapman went right after him. Imagine if you had Rex Chapman with those Cotton Fitzsimmons, Cotton Express teams, that running and gunning, that athleticism. Like that could have been something that made that team even more interesting. Where Tim Perry, the best thing you remember is part of the Barkley deal, right?
I mean, and that's where you kind of got to go with that a little bit. It's like without Tim Perry, if you make that pick, then you don't end up with Charles Barkley, which, we saw how that played out. So
splitting hairs?
I would say shoulda, coulda, woulda, maybe.
Shoulda, coulda, woulda?
Oh,
I could
wow.
agree on that.
Wow.
Okay.
I thought this was a who candidate for sure.
Oh, I know who Tim Perry is.
So do I. But the point is, like, that's not the point.
Youngin, you don't know who Tim
I
Perry?
know who all of these guys are, but the point is, like, would you know who Tim Perry was if not for the Charles Barkley trade? Not really.
That's funny.
Like, if you ask the average Suns fan who is Tim Perry,
Oh no, yeah, for sure.
They're gonna say
Okay,
who?
we can put him in who. Listen. I don't.
Well,
I'm
I
not
would
gonna
be
strong
okay
arm
with
you about
going
this
up to
one, for sure.
splitting hairs, but if you want to leave them in who,
that's
Yeah,
one
so
I'm
you
not
do.
going to fight.
Yeah, it's
So-
all good.
All right, next up, Jalen Smith, 10th overall in the 2020 NBA draft, taking over guys like Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey, Devin Vassell.
He's
Sticks kids.
I'm sorry. I think he's my first candidate for franchise-altering mistake.
yes. You
I
win
mean-
a championship.
You're not wrong.
Everybody and their mama was like, "We need a point guard. We need a point guard. We need a point guard."
Yeah.
Hello, you had one right there, staring you in the face. And I think about, listen, we might have all been split on DA Luka. We might have been all split up on a couple other prospects, but this one felt like a majority of the fan base was like, "That's the pick. What are we doing?" And then they took Jalen Smith, and half of us were like, "Who?
yeah.
Oh my goodness!"
And the other
Really?
half were, he looks like Amari Stoudemire in the 4 clips I could find.
Look, man, it was not a good
Ouch.
look when most of the analysis that was out on Jalen Smith, when we looked up who the hell he was, because no one projected him to go that high. It was, yeah, he might be able to play the 4, but he's probably more of a backup 5. Cool. So we got a guy who's either a questionable fit next to DA or a guy who's his backup with a top 10 pick. And then you see what happened with Tyrese Halliburton, the unbelievable player he's become. Tyrese Maxey, same deal. Even Devin Vassell. Like, you would have still loved to have just Devin Vassell on this current team, or when you were heading into Kevin Durant trade negotiations. So yeah, for me, this is a franchise-altering mistake, especially because Jalen Smith was here for 2 seasons.
I'd rather have had the company Halliburton than him, than Jalen Smith in this. Like, Jalen Smith was the ultimate bad pick. Like, and I feel like James Jones was buying a little bit into his own press clippings at that point
from the Cam Johnson.
because everyone was like, that was a real reach. So I think he felt like, oh, I can do this again because I hit on it, and he swung and missed. So
Yep. All right. Franchise altering mistake for Jalen Smith. Sorry, guy. Next up, we've got Earl Clark, 14th overall in the 2009 draft, taking over guys like Drew Holiday, Ty Lawson, Jeff Teague, Darren Collison. Where do you want to
such a
put
bad
Earl
pick.
Clark?
He'd be
So, does this one make your heart hurt?
It does, because I remember watching Drew in person and be like, man, I would love that guy on our team.
yep.
And then we did not take him, and we took this dude, and I was just like, no.
Aw.
No.
Another time, everybody knew the Suns could use a point guard, and they didn't go get one.
How did we
Yeah.
go from how do we go from extremes? Why are we always an extreme team? Why can't we ever just be in the middle? We either have 17 freaking point guards or none.
I don't know.
Like, what are we
Yeah.
doing with our lives?
It's a wave of overcorrection.
Yeah, that actually is so true. Like, there's a part of me that fears for what's going to happen either in this draft or in 2 years when we have another pick if we don't get another one. It's like, oh man, we really do need a point guard. Let's just grab this random dude from Yugoslavia because we heard that he balled out when he was 14 one time.
Okay.
Like, okay.
Then James Jones ate the GM in 2 years because he does not know any 14-year-old Yugoslavians that balled out at any point.
That's
true.
Formerly known as. Yeah, Earl Clark, I have him in coulda, shoulda, woulda, but I'll take massive draft busts as well, just because, like, passing up Drew Holiday, that hurts. He only played 2 seasons and averaged 2.8 points and 1.3 rebounds per game.
So bad.
He was bad.
You want to put him in massive draft bust, and we'll just keep him towards the end
I think
of the line,
that's
basically.
fair.
I think that's fair.
I do have
Okay.
a fun story about him.
Sure.
A buddy of mine worked at the Suns at the time. He was at a Best Buy. This was Earl Clark's rookie year. Earl Clark walked up behind him, stuck his fingers in his back, and said, "Give me your money."
Oh my God.
Freaked the hell out of my buddy. So Earl
Oh.
Clark was at least good for a
See, now
laugh.
I need
kind
you
of
to tell
inclined
me
to
what
move
buddy
down
that
a
was
tier,
after
but-
the show was over.
We should also note with Earl Clark, like, as much as this was a bad pick, it's not as bad in terms of the draft positioning. Like it was end of the lottery, which if it was like top 10, then I would say it's worse. But I still think draft bust is fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we've got Kendall Marshall, 13th overall in the 2012 draft, taking over guys like John Henson, Mo Harkless, Royce White, Tyler Zeller, Terrence Jones.
Again, an overcorrection to try and replace Steve Nash.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, look, I think he's probably a coulda, shoulda, woulda, just because of the fact that there weren't a lot of guys that you went, that was a can't miss guy that went after him, in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I also think everybody knew what this guy's flaw was. They're like, this guy can pass like crazy, and if he just learns how to shoot, and he never learned how to shoot. So, like, it was like a buyer beware. You knew what you were getting, and he didn't fix him in any way,
Yeah, I mean, he, like, Lindsay was reading off the list of names, and I'm just like, he was a bad pick for sure, but the next, like, 6 or 7 guys that went after him were not, like, great players by any stretch. Some of them, maybe Mo Harkless or Tyler Zeller could have helped you, Terrence Jones for a little bit there, but other than that, it's slim pickings.
That's why I kind of feel like you should put him at either the end of coulda, shoulda, woulda, or the beginning of like splitting.
I had splitting hairs. The fact that he only played 1 season for the Suns is really, really rough.
He technically came back a second time and they cut him before he ever played.
That is true.
I'm good with splitting hairs. So let's put him in splitting hairs.
Can I show a picture and tell him the story?
Sure.
All right. So I covered him in his first training. It was, yeah. That was my second job back then. So this was his first day of training camp. He was wearing a Dora the Explorer backpack because they made all the rookies do it. But what I really remember is when they drafted him, they picked him at number 13, and I believe it was Steve Nash, Dan Marley. There was one other bigger name that the Suns had taken at that pick, and they had this graphic that it was those guys and Kendall Marshall, and it said who's next under it, and I will never forget that graphic because he was not next. He was not much.
Fun fact: my first fantasy basketball team was named Forgetting Kendall Marshall.
Nice.
So it didn't take long for that trauma to set in.
All right, next up we've got Zarko Chabarkapa. Is that how you say it?
Yes.
Okay. I was like, I keep forgetting how to say this.
Okay.
17th overall in 2003, taking over David West, Boris Diaw.
And that's it.
Yeah, we can put him in the Who category.
Before or after Tim Perry?
It doesn't matter.
I put him after.
They're all shrug emojis in that category.
Great name, though, honestly.
Great name. Only played 2 seasons with the Suns and 3 NBA seasons total.
He had a moment, if I'm remembering correctly, where he looked like he could have been something, and then I think it was Kenneth Fareed hit him when he was going up for a dunk. He broke his wrist, and he never could do anything ever again. So
that's unfortunate. Come on, Manimal.
I may be blaming the wrong guy. I can have the story completely wrong, but that's how I remember it. And since he's a Who, none of you are going to know if I'm wrong or not. So.
I'm going to look it up now.
Ooh. All right, next up, we've got Ed Pinckney, 10th overall, 1985, taking over Karl Malone, Joan Dumars, AC Green, Terry Porter.
Yeah, the list goes on and on. The list goes on and on. That one was pretty rough because let's just take what we know about Karl Malone aside. Like, he was a baller at Louisiana Tech, and he did some big time things. I think he's still the school's all-time leading scorer. Like, he was physical, and in the time of that draft in '85, like, you needed some physical dudes in the NBA because everybody felt like they were fighting every single night. So, a guy like Karl Malone was a no-brainer, but they went with good old Ed and the Providence guy or Villanova. I think it was Villanova. Yeah. And it just,
He lasted 2 seasons in Phoenix, 12 seasons total in the NBA, but only 2 in Phoenix.
Yeah, I feel like he's a coulda, shoulda, woulda, because you look at it and you go, okay, all these other guys you could have taken, but I don't think anybody viewed him as a franchise changer necessarily in '85. So I think it's tough to say massive bust.
No, it's definitely more about who was picked behind him than it was the draft pick.
I would be
shoulda, coulda, woulda?
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And to his credit, I don't believe he got caught up in the cocaine scandal. So which
he wasn't
happened
here
right
long
around there. So
he wasn't here long enough.
All right, next up we have Jay Humphries, 13th overall in the 1984 draft, taking over John Stockton.
I mean, look at it. You could have had Stockton and Malone, and you blew it. There it is.
You could have had KJ and Malone on the same roster.
Oh man, we're gonna sidestep.
Christ,
We're
man.
gonna
What are we
sidestep
doing? Come on,
that
man.
conversation.
Come on, man.
Yeah. So he's probably lower on my tiers just because he was 13th overall, and like I've been saying, like if it's an end of lottery pick, that's not as bad as like a top 10 selection. And Stockton's kind of the only guy in the vicinity that you look at and was like, damn, they missed out on that guy. So I would have him in splitting hairs or who, honestly.
Yeah, I would probably put him in splitting hairs.
Splitting hairs before or after Kendall Marshall?
After.
After?
Yeah.
Everybody good with after?
Yeah, I'm good with
All right,
after.
perfect. We're going to take a quick break to remind you that it is summertime, and that means Polar Pops and Frosters hit just a little bit better this time of the year, thanks to our friends over at Circle K, the ultimate way to cool down in the blistering summer heat that is Arizona's heat. And right now you can save some money when you sign up for their free membership program, the Inner Circle. So Polar Pops right now through September 3rd at any Arizona location are just 79 cents. But when you're a part of the Inner Circle, you get them for 69 cents.
Nice.
You also save a bunch of money as well by being an Inner Circle member. First and foremost, you save 25 cents per gallon on your first 5 fill-ups. You save 3 cents per gallon every single day. There are always tons of coupons and deals going on inside the Inner Circle app that are exclusive to members only. So join Inner Circle for free today by downloading the Circle K app. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details, but trust me, this is one Inner Circle you definitely want to be a part of.
If you are stuck in somebody's outer circle, you know what can help fix that?
Money.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you.
Cold
And our
hard
friends
cash.
over at Desert Financial Credit Union want to hook you up with $200. They got $200 waiting for you. Look, we can talk about how many years they've been in town, 84. We can talk about all the financial experts they have there, all of them, and all the great things that you can do, savings accounts, mortgages, basically anything you want. But what you want to know is how do you get that $200? And it's super simple, right? You open a free checking account online. And that's it. There's no more, there's no other step. That's it. And then you're going to get $200 in bonuses. It's the easiest $200 you can make on a weekend ever, right? Like to take 5 minutes this weekend and get yourself a Desert Financial Credit Union checking account online. Boom, $200. So open that free checking account today at desertfinancial.com/200.
All right, next up.
Here we
Oh,
go.
buddy, here's starting to get a little heated.
Let's go.
Josh Jackson, 4th overall in the 2017 draft, taking over guys like De'Aaron Fox, Lauri Markkanen, Donovan Mitchell, Bam Adebayo, Josh Jackson.
You didn't even mention the fact that we convinced him to screw over the Celtics so they didn't draft him, so we couldn't get, was that Jason Tatum?
Jason Tatum.
Yeah, Jason
Who's that
Tatum.
guy? That guy that's playing in the finals?
Yeah.
Jason
Yeah.
Tatum.
So, put him in that franchise-altering mistake right there.
But
Yep.
we don't blame. Do we blame Josh for that, or do we blame the front office for
Front
that?
office.
We blame
No,
everyone involved.
I blame, he chose to go along with the plan to piss off the Celtics too. I blame every single person that thought that was a good idea.
Man.
Okay.
Listen,
And yeah, I'm talking to you too, Ryan, all right?
this one, Jesus, this one hurts a lot because I'll be honest, a lot of us here wanted Josh Jackson. Like I thought he was going to be legit. That's probably one of my biggest personal draft misfires. I thought obviously there were concerns with the shot, but I just thought he had that dog in him. Like I thought he was going to be a really good wing complement to Devin Booker, and I think a lot of people were excited at the time about Josh Jackson falling to number 4. But there's no doubt this is a franchise-altering mistake. Like even if you take the Jason Tatum sabotagery out of the mix, like De'Aaron Fox was the next pick too. And having a point guard next to Devin Booker, I get why they didn't because they still had Bledsoe and Brandon Knight at the time. But man, when you look at what Fox has become and what happened with Bledsoe and Brandon Knight here, that's brutal all the way around.
I believe you confused that dog for pot. That was what was in it.
He had that in him.
Josh Jackson was the #1 celebrated recruit in the country when he went to when he went to Kansas. And when he came out of Kansas after his first year, he had a lot of hype behind him. And I think the Suns just completely fell in that trap and were like, yeah, we're going to get this fucking steal at 4 because he dropped down and all these other players got taken. Nope.
I think that's why I would put him in massive draft bust, though. I get what you're saying, but like there was hype around him. It wasn't like this crazy, what the hell were you thinking situation like a Jalen Smith, right?
I initially no.
Or maybe at least at the end of franchise altering mistake, because that's what I'm saying. Like there's a difference. Everyone wanted Tyrese over Jalen. In the Josh Jackson situation, everyone felt similarly about Josh Jackson.
Yeah, I get that. I would put him behind Jalen and at the end of franchise altering mistakes so far, but it's still still delayed Devin Booker ascending for another 2 to 3 years because of how bad you whiffed on a top 5 pick there.
When part of your lore is allegedly hotboxed a kid in a car, you deserve to be in massive draft bust, right? Dude, the other part we remember about him, he didn't show up to an event, so James Jones had to buy beer. Those are the 2 most impactful moments that Josh Jackson had as a Phoenix Sun.
I will say, Josh to me was a huge example of the people around you can hurt you. Your circle can be your downfall.
Yeah.
And I think Josh was a big victim of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on. Alex Len, 5th overall in the 2013 NBA draft, taking over KCP, CJ McCollum, Steven Adams.
I go coulda, shoulda, woulda. Because honestly, in that draft, the Cavs were about to take him at 1, right? It was not that this makes it much better, but it was Anthony Bennett or Alex Len at 1 for the Cavs, right? So when you get that guy at 5, who was supposedly going to go 1, I don't think this one's as bad as some of the other ones in my mind.
Anthony Bennett would be my 1 Josh Jackson. That's the guy that I thought was going to be much better than he ended up being. So I would have been on top of the table if we drafted Anthony Bennett. I promise you I would have.
I mean, didn't he eventually wind up as an NIZ son?
Come on. He did. At number 5, Anthony Bennett I would have been cool with, but man, the number 1 thing, that was crazy to me because I saw him play in college multiple times and I was like, I think he'll be good, but not number 1 pick. Alex Len for me at 5, I got it. I didn't really want Alex Len at that spot. But he's been in the NBA for over a decade. Like he has carved out a career, even if it's not as a impact player or anything like that. So I have him in coulda, woulda, shoulda.
At the beginning or before or after Ed?
I think before.
And that draft wasn't strong.
No, it wasn't a strong draft.
Bad.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at what was Victor Oladipo probably the best out of that.
Yeah, I really wanted him.
Top 5.
Okay, but Victor was great until he got hurt.
He went 2, right? So you wouldn't have even had a chance at him.
Right.
So.
I wanted them to trade up for him so bad.
Victor Oladipo was like the all-star of one of my fantasy basketball teams one year. And I wrecked everybody thanks to him.
I'd put him in front of. Also, Alex always worked hard. Like he wasn't a screw up. He wasn't a guy that didn't put in the effort. I'd put him in coulda, woulda.
I'd put him. I actually would put him in splitting hairs just because there wasn't really much to choose from.
I mean, I guess that's fair too. It wasn't.
I mean, it's not like we missed on anybody.
You could argue CJ McCollum, but there were questions about him.
He went to Lehigh. It's like, all right, I'm not taking this fucking kid because he had 1 good game against Duke in the tournament.
Do you want to put him after Ed in shoulda, coulda, woulda?
I'll put him after.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he's still a top 5 pick. I know there weren't a ton of options, but like even KCP would have been a good pick there.
All right, next up, Armin Gilliam, 4th overall, 1987, taking over guys like Scottie Pippen, Kevin Johnson, Horace Grant, Reggie Miller.
Massive bust.
That's massive. That's a big time mistake, especially considering like not only did Pippen get taken after you, but the Bulls realized Pippen's talent, traded up. They traded the Sonics to get him. And so like then, you fast forward to 1993 and you're like, No shit.
Damn it.
It would have been nice if we had that guy. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And then obviously the trade rumors with Dan Marley during the All-Star game and all that stuff, because, you know, Pippen was rumored to be coming here too. That was such a big miss for a guy that, you know, a lot of us don't really remember.
Well, and I think you also, this Suns team had so few top 10 picks or top 5 picks in history. And I mean, God, they've missed a lot. But that one in particular, that was a weak mid-'80s period. You could have really changed things if you had hit on a Pippen or somebody.
Yeah.
So.
I had him in franchise-altering mistake, honestly.
think?
Well, because he
that.
was only in Phoenix for 3 seasons, and that was, I think, one of 2 times you've had the number 2 overall pick. And, like, to not get, not even just Scotty, but, like, KJ,
Reggie.
Horace, Reggie, Muggsy Bogues, Mark Jackson. Like, there were all these names.
Reggie is
afterwards.
almost even more unexcusable because Reggie was playing at UCLA. Reggie was in your backyard, basically. Right. You got to see Reggie as many times as you wanted to, and you still were like, nah, I'm going to go with this guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you
So-
think about those ripple effects. Pippen, Reggie, and those guys in the 90s, what they did, what they were
Eastern Conference.
capable of, and what you could have been in that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll go franchise altering
I would
mistakes.
say too.
That makes
Towards
sense.
the end, though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
For now, anyway. All right. Next up, Marquise Chris, 8th overall in the 2016 draft, taking over Jakob Poeltl. Gerald, that's your guy. DeMontis Sabonis. R.I.P. Marquise Chris career.
Can I might surprise you. I actually think this was a worse pick than Dragan Bender
Oh, yeah?
because you gave up so much. You gave up two first-round picks in that draft. You gave up Bogdan Bogdanovic, who actually turned into a very good player in the NBA, all to move up to that spot to take a guy that was a total flameout.
That's probably the funniest thing that's ever happened to me covering the Phoenix Suns is I was there at draft headquarters the night of that draft, and all the front office executives were on the floor above us. And so we got the news that Dragan Bender was going to be the pick at number 4. And then a few minutes later, we heard this massive cheer erupt from upstairs. And we were like, what did they just do? And then we get the news that they had traded up for Marquise Chris. And the fact that they were trading up for Marquise Chris was, like, in retrospect, one of the funniest things that's ever happened.
But at the time, I remember everybody going, wow, this is amazing, because they were debating over Bender and Chris at
They
4,
were.
and then all of a sudden they walk out of that draft. And I remember people debating hard about which guy to take at 4. And then they walk out of the draft with both guys, and you're like, holy shit, they actually pulled that off. And you go, now I understand why.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, he only spent 2 seasons here. He was a top 10 pick. Like you said, you traded a lot for. So I have him at the end of massive draft bust for me.
I mean, one game doesn't say it all, but I saw Marquise Chris play in person at Washington, and I was just like, when I heard that he was going to be a top 10 pick, I was just like, were they watching a different game than I was? Because this kid is not that great.
Yeah.
I didn't like him.
He was nice.
You think
Yeah, he
that
was
Dragan
nice.
Bender is ahead of him?
Yes, just because he was drafted at number 4. And
But
Yeah.
even with as much as you gave up,
I mean, the picks that they traded, who did those turn into? They didn't. I don't think they turned into anybody
Georgie
substantial.
Papadopoulos or something?
Papagiannis. I mean,
Papagiannis
Bogdanovic,
is a
yes.
great
I really liked him and I wanted him, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
All right.
Marquise Chris was one of those guys.
I think he's a massive bust.
Yeah, definitely a massive bust, but just before or after Earl is the question.
I feel like they're all the same to me on the tier.
I would put him
I don't
after
know.
Bender and before Clark.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's fine.
Right in the middle.
I think Marquise got a little too big for his britches, I guess, if you want to say it like that. Like, he thought he was a starter from the jump because of the team he was coming to, right? You kind of needed him to be that. But I think he thought he was better than what he was, and therefore didn't need to put in the work to get better because of the situation he was in, where they already were like, you're our starter from day one.
Well, he showed up after his first season, like, out of shape.
Yes.
And a lot of the conversation was that, like, I'm a rookie. I just don't know, like, what my off-season workout regimen should be. I just didn't eat healthy.
I think that was the cop-out. That was the lie.
Yeah, and it was kind of like, this is a little concerning, right?
Yeah. No, he thought he didn't have to do what everyone else in the NBA has to do in order to be truly successful.
I said the same thing after my first season. I came back. Didn't know I was supposed to work out in the off
To
season.
be fair, if you look at my college diet and gave me $1 million to inject into that fast food regimen, I probably would have come back looking the same way.
Yeah,
So
fair.
You're like, hey, I didn't know that if I spent $100,000 on the dollar menu, I was going to come back looking like this.
All right, next up we've got William Bedford, 6th overall in the 1986 draft, taking over guys like Ron Harper, Scott Skiles, Mark Price, Dennis Rodman. I don't know how to say Sabonis' dad's first name.
Arvidas.
Arvidas.
Not your Vitas, not my Vitas.
Our
Vitas.
Where would you like to place William Bedford?
Who?
Oh, man.
I mean, he's a who. First of all, ain't nobody in their right mind ever going to draft Dennis Rodman coming out of Central Oklahoma Valley State Tech Bible College. Like,
That's fair.
Like, come on. Like, that was just that. When you draft guys out of those spots, that's, to me, there's a little bit of luck involved in hitting on those types of prospects.
And Arvidas Sabonis, everybody knew he wasn't coming over. I mean,
Yeah,
he didn't come
that too.
over until far later,
Yeah.
and he had 2 bad knees at that point. So I don't count that one either. Yeah, I think this is a who.
Yeah.
Before Tim, after Tim, before Zarko.
Would you like to weigh in, Gerald? Or?
I would have had like coulda, woulda, shoulda, honestly, because like Ron Harper, Scott Skiles, those guys could have helped right away. But I get it. Like a lot of people don't know who William Bedford is. He is a number 6 overall pick,
A
though.
lot of people don't even know who Scott Skiles is.
That's true. That's which makes me sad.
Who?
Wasn't he the former Suns coach?
He owns the record for most assists in a game.
He does.
Ooh, how exciting.
Scotty.
So
How
at the end of
exciting for
splitting
him.
hairs, you
Yeah,
want to
we can do-
split the difference?
Yeah, let's do splitting
He
hairs.
was fired
At
as
the
a
end
Suns
of it?
coach because he was a real asshole. I mean, that was.
He was fired as multiple coaches
Yes.
because of that
Before
reason.
or after Jay?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, at the beginning.
Drop
Well,
it,
you gotta
Eric.
tell us which one.
Drop it like
That's
it's
fine.
At the beginning
That's
of
cool.
it?
Yeah.
He
Okay.
was drafted so high.
At the beginning of it. Should we save the big one for last?
Oh my
Let's
God,
save the big
woman,
one
you
for
are
last.
just.
Or do you want to do it right now?
No, it's fine. We might as well just
Okay.
save the best for last.
Markieff Morris, 13th
Fuck that
overall,
guy.
2011, taking over guys like Kawhi Leonard, Tobias Harris, Jimmy Butler.
It's okay. So this is not on Marquis.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why he would be franchise-altering mistake is because of the reasoning behind why the Suns allegedly did not pull the
Big
trigger
facts.
on drafting him.
Big
Yep.
facts.
He's too sweaty. What the fuck are you talking about?
Kawhi sweat through his suit. I can't draft
Oh my!
that man.
I'm sweating right now. I'm not even doing anything.
Also, Arizona. What are you talking
Oh my
about?
goodness!
Right.
Yeah, that too.
He just got done working out. I can't believe he's sweating.
That's
Maybe that's the reason why they miss so many times in the draft.
crazy. That is a crazy reason to not draft somebody, and they pay dearly for it.
Fuck that guy. With 1,000 fires.
Why?
I've told this story before.
He
Hey,
hates that.
Markieff Morris is a total asshole, fake tough guy. All right. I'll tell again.
I
I'll
need
tell
a story.
You want
I need a
story
story.
time? I'm coming. I'm social media guy,
Uh-oh.
dressed in my shirt and my tie, and I come down the tunnel, and I'm that phrasing, and I I come around the corner, and Markieff Morris makes eye contact with me, drops his shoulder into me, and knocks me the hell over. My phone goes flying, everything, and goes and keeps walking. I'm like, yeah.
Espo, you left a lot of money on the table with
Yeah,
that.
you did.
That's messed
I'm
up. Oh,
just
yeah.
saying,
Oh, yeah.
that was a franchise-altering mistake
Yes.
you made there,
1,000,000%.
Espo.
I
And
could
then-
be doing this on a sky deck somewhere.
Right?
Right. Right?
My goodness.
You could be the
I did-
owner of All City.
I did tell Markieff I was dating his mom right before. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
No,
whoa.
totally
And
kidding.
his brother
But
would
he-
have kicked your
yeah,
ass too.
he-
Wait, he was
He
coming
used
out
to-
all the way. What'd you do last night? You're like, your mom. yeah, okay. You
But
deserved
he was also the guy that at practice, even in his rookie year, he'd be like, Markieff, can we get a minute or two with you? Go, no. He'd walk all the way up the stairs in the old practice court, and he'd go, I guess you can. And he'd make you ask the question from down at the stairs, shouting up to him. He's just an asshole.
Like a lord on a balcony. What the
Yeah, it's just an asshole.
Look, I get along with 99% of people in life, and especially on the beat. He is one of the few that I did not enjoy covering, just because he was a prick. He really was. And like the
His
fact
brother
that
was worse.
like the fact that he came here, barely developed during his time here, talked oodles of shit about the fans here.
Mhm.
Like he's a reviled Suns draft pick for a reason. I have him in franchise altering mistake just because of all those things
Yeah.
compounded.
I also have told the trade deadline story too, where they were like, all right, guys, we're not trading Markieff. This is an hour or 30 minutes before the trade deadline ends. It's the year that he isn't playing, right?
Yeah.
I had basically been sent home. And they call us all in the room and like, all right, guys, Markieff isn't going anywhere, so we got to spin this. How do we say we think he's an important part of our future and sell all this shit? Literally the worst 20 minutes of my life trying to help make bullshit up about this guy. And then with 5 minutes to go, our friend Julie Fye gets a call and she goes, oh, we're trading him, so you guys can stop now. And I was like,
Oh,
thank
God.
the Lord.
All right, before, after Josh Jackson.
I have him at the end of that
At the
just because he
end,
was a
after
number
Armin?
11 pick.
Okay,
Yeah.
that works. All right, best for last. Here we go.
Ooh, buddy.
One, DeAndre Ayton,
Put him-
first overall in 2018, taking over Luka Doncic.
I was one of the flag bearers of the Draft DeAndre Ayton group, and I'd like to apologize to each and every one of you who ever tried to sell on that bullshit because I was stupid, and this is part of why I hate the draft. You could put him straight at the top of franchise-altering bust because
Ooh.
that was the one time you've had the number one pick, and you screwed yourself silly with it when you look at everybody else, including Luka, in that draft.
Hold up.
Okay, other than Marvin Bagley. If you had
Uh-oh.
went Marvin Bagley first, I
Uh-oh.
would have. I'd be done with this franchise.
Here we go.
So.
Go ahead,
Saul.
Gerald.
No, you go ahead, man.
No,
I know
think-
you got thoughts.
I do got thoughts, but I kind of
Hey.
want to hear your thoughts first.
All right,
Uh-oh.
let me go first. I'm not gonna try to rewrite history here. There was a very clear moment early in the draft evaluation process where Luka Doncic was the clear number one prospect, and then as we got further into the draft process, and DeAndre Ayton had a draft workout here that felt more like a fucking coronation ceremony, it changed. Things changed. Like suddenly DA was at the top of the list because everyone in that building knew that the Suns were going to take DA no matter what. And there were a lot of us that were doing this draft evaluation process that were watching Luka play overseas at age 16, 17 against EuroLeague talent, which is better than what DA played over here in the NCAA, and was the MVP of that league. Like everybody that evaluated Luka and watched his stuff was like, yeah, this guy is going to be really, really good. He was the clear number one choice, but there was the unavoidable U of A factor. There was the unavoidable hometown kid. We've never had a franchise center like this before. This guy could be the next David Robinson. And so it kind of got, like, I'll be 100% honest. This was the first time in my son's career where I felt the impact of like, wow, people that disagree with my son's opinion can be really nasty online. I got called the F word. I got called racist because I wanted DA over, not you. Like that was my first experience with like, wow, people can really be dicks online over differing opinions. And I'm not saying that has any bearing on why I'm putting him number one in the franchise altering mistake category. But you look at what Luka Doncic is doing now. He is a generational talent. And even if he doesn't win the finals this year, you could have had Booker and Luka Doncic on the same team. You could have paired them together for the next decade as the best backcourt in the NBA. And I'm sorry, this narrative that like Book and Luka wouldn't have gotten along is crazy to me. We've talked so much about how Booker is a good off-ball scorer, about how he's needed a point guard, all this shit. Luka could have been that guy for 10 years. It's mind-blowing to me, and it sucks that they missed out on a guy who's probably going to wind up being one of the 10 or 15 greatest players of all time.
You talk about scouting, though. The story is, and I have it on very good authority, that Sarver wouldn't let Ryan McDonough go overseas to watch Luka. It was Sarver and James Jones that were the only two allowed to go do it. They wouldn't send him over. And so the GM didn't even get a chance to see this kid in person. And there were forces that were pushing for DA. And I also understand there was a large contingent. I know you're saying that Luka was the clear cut, but there was a large contingent of even NBA people, not just fans, that were saying DA too. It was a split in.
It was
in
a
some
split in
states.
Arizona. Everywhere else, I'm telling you, the draft experts were saying Luka's generational. DA can be, but this guy is the closest thing to a sure thing in the draft we've seen in quite a while. He's dominating better competition overseas against grown men. DA's getting sent home by Buffalo in the first round of the tournament. I'm sorry. There's different levels to it. And I'm not sitting up here saying that everybody was saying this. I'm saying that the people that were watching Luka and that weren't U of A fans were saying this.
Gerald,
Hold up. Let me talk now. Okay, fuck this.
Go ahead.
No, listen, like I get that that's your perspective, but I completely disagree that it was a consensus across the world that Luka should be the number 1 overall pick over DA, because even if you just get outside the Suns world, okay, Luka drops to number 3, not even number 2, because whatever reason you want to say.
Who was number 2?
And he gets traded to number 5 for Dallas and Atlanta. Like, if Atlanta knew that Luka was going to be this surefire, can't miss prospect, world defeater, then they don't trade for Trae Young. Like, that just does not happen. But instead, they make the trade. So that's at least 3 teams that passed up on Luka Doncic, number 1, right off the bat. Okay, number 2, DA was no slouch. And I know, like, it was surprising to hear, like, people talk about his motor in talking about like games and practices and stuff like that, because if you've ever been around Sean Miller, like that's just not going to be true. He would have beat that kid's ass into oblivion. It doesn't matter how big of a superstar he was. Also, I was there for like 27 of the 32 games, including right there against Buffalo, where they fucking were terrible. But like, he looked every bit the part of a dominant big, like, that you're going to find in college basketball. And like the physical strength that he showed in overpowering a lot of guys in the Pac-12 was just like so eye-opening. And you just don't see guys like DA come along very often with the athleticism and the skill sets, that he had. Now, of course, we don't know how this is all going to play out. I mean, but the guy did get us to the finals, and he was a very important part of that run to the finals. Even though they lost, he was a very important part of that run to the finals. Without DA, I don't think we get to the finals, because who else are we going to have at center at that point in time, right? And then also, like, he averaged a double-double his entire career. Like, I know we would have loved for him to be as dominant as Luka, and I get that. And I'm not saying that he was he should be on the who list or the splitting hairs list. But I don't think that he should be at the top of the top in terms of franchise-altering mistakes, because he did perform well. And he is still in the top like 10 of rebounding and I think points scored in franchise history. Like, he did something while he was here. He wasn't just like Sam Bowie, who just never did anything, or Greg Oden, who just never did anything because of injuries or because of lack of talent. Like, he has the talent. It's unfortunate that we couldn't get the most out of him and really piece him, but besides Devin Booker, to be that Kobe Shaq 2.0. But I think that's also the part of the problem with DA is DA set himself up for failure so many times by saying stupid shit that he had no business saying. Instead of just letting his play do the talking, he talked a lot, talking about the Shaq and Kobe 2.0, or I'm playing for that next contract. When those things were uttered, immediately people were already taken back, like, whoa, what? Like, the first contract after this rookie contract should not be the goal. Isn't a championship or MVPs or whatever, aren't those the goals? And that obviously it put a sour taste in a lot of people's mouths. And then the end of DA, that last year obviously was terrible. But I'm sorry, like, I sat there, I looked at it, and even if I take away the U of A, listen, man, I've been hard on U of A players left and right, so I don't have a U of A bias when it comes to NBA scouting or prospecting. Like, I think some players are better than others. I didn't think Alonzo Trier should be in the NBA, and now he's not. Like, I didn't think Raleigh Alkins should be in the NBA. I told them both to their face, like, you should not be going pro because I don't think you have it in you, and they haven't made it into the NBA. DA, I felt like, was a generational talent at the time, and I felt like it was a landslide that people here in the Valley wanted DA. Now, I congratulate you on getting your analysis right, for sure, but like, I don't think it was a consensus across the country that it was Luka or nobody else, because if that was the case, then number 2, number 3, and number 5 would have taken Luka, and they wouldn't have passed up on him.
Let me clarify. I'm talking about the draft analysis people, the people that were writing these articles, that were doing the research. Hold on. Let me finish.
Are those people too?
No, because that's the thing.
It's literally
that's
their
the
jobs.
thing. You brought up He just said that Sarver wouldn't let his fucking GM go watch a top prospect.
Beyond
like,
the Suns,
how is that?
we're talking about other teams that also passed on Luka. You think that they were just as cheap as Sarver?
The argument that other teams passed on Luka, so it's not that bad, holds no weight when you look at who the other teams were. The Sacramento Kings, who have drafted like fucking dog shit for a decade, and the Atlanta Hawks, who have been in hell between that space of we're building through the draft and we're competing for a decade as well. Like, that doesn't absolve them for me. It really doesn't. If anything, it makes it worse. Like, don't feel bad. We're in the same class as the Kings, except we went first. Like, that makes me feel worse than better.
But we didn't take Marvin Bagley.
But I mean,
I get that. And I'm not saying that Ayton is a bad pick, because like you said, he did help the Suns get to the finals. The Valley-oop is one of the greatest moments in Suns playoff history, franchise history. Anybody that was in the building is going to remember that moment until the day they die. So I'm not trying to say that Ayton was some terrible player here, but when you look at the gap between the two, the fact that he's no longer even on the roster, and the fact that Luka is going to go on and do this, like, yeah, we went to one finals with DA. We could have been to multiple with Luka, depending on how you build out the rest of that team. So that, for me, is why he's number one. It's not anything about Ayton necessarily, but it is about the fact that you passed up a top 10, top 15 player of all time, probably, by the time his career pans out. And that was the only time you ever had the number one pick. Like, that just, it gives it extra weight.
Okay, so I think there's truth in what both of you are saying. If you look back at the mock drafts, a lot of them had DA.
Because it was after the ceremony, the coronation ceremony.
I mean, I get that. But I also think, Saul, you're right in it's tough to look at it as a horrible, horrible mistake because DA wasn't that bad. The reason I put him at the top of the franchise altering is the fact that Luka, if you had him with who he is, that would have had a much bigger impact than what DeAndre Ayton was. So that's it. Hindsight is why I put him there.
I get that that's the perspective. And again, like, these are things that, like, we can never predict in terms of, like, do we know how this would have all worked out had we not done this, that, and the other, right? What I'm going to say is like, listen, at the end of the day, whether you like DA or not, whether we got Luka or not, after the 5 years of DeAndre Ayton, we went to the playoffs 3 out of those 5 years. We had one of the best regular seasons in Suns history in that 5-year period. We went to the finals, 2 wins away from, it was the first time we won the first 2 games of the NBA finals ever. Like, we thought we were going to win the NBA championship for a little while there. And DA was a huge part that season because it looked like he was going to start living up to the promise of what was there, right? And then everything just kind of fell apart after that. So I'm sitting there like, okay, even if you want to put him at franchise-altering mistake, you still got something out of him. So I don't think he should be at the top of the top, because I think at least he gave you something. He gave you some results. And the other guys on that list didn't give you shit. They didn't give you any single thing. Not a shred of anything you could point to and say, oh, yeah, at least we got this out of it. Not even one.
But I think you're trying to I think you feel like all the blame, if you put him at one, is solely on his shoulders. And I don't think when you're looking at a franchise-altering mistake, you got to think the mistake of the owner, the mistake of the GM, what another guy did that makes it feel like that.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, Espo, because if you look at the other 2 picks that year, okay. All right, first, Mikal. There's a good argument that Mikal Bridges should have never fucking been drafted in the first place because homie was right behind him in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And I sat there and watched Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and I was just like, man, that dude's pretty fucking good. Like, he was right there in front of me playing against fucking KBD? Keita Bates-Diop, in Ohio State. And he murdered him. And I was just like, man, that guy's pretty fucking good. And then we took Mikal, and I was just like, what?
Well, you know the story. Like, you know the story.
No, but give me the story in a second. But then if you fast forward and we take Ely motherfucking Okobo, and you have Mikal on your team, right? You've drafted Mikal, Villanova product right there. Hey, tell me a little bit about Jalen fucking Brunson. No? Okay, we're going to take this dude out of France who was getting cooked every single day in practice. Lindsay was there. She could tell you. Dude was getting murdered every day in practice. Like, how are you here still? I don't even understand this. And RIP to George King. He didn't make it.
But you know the difference there. Like,
Sure,
number one,
yeah,
number 10, number 31.
But those are all as well could have been franchise altering to a certain degree as well. But again, I'm splitting hairs.
Which, by the way, we chose not to put Mikal in here for a reason because DA was already going to be spicy enough. The last thing we needed to do was add in Mikal there.
This is a true 100% true story. They had agreed to trade and draft Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and there are people who have said OKC could hear Robert Sarver screaming at Ryan McDonough during that call, and he killed it and said that they had to draft Mikal Bridges in part because his son had worked as an intern in the basketball operations department that summer and really liked Mikal Bridges. So supposedly Ryan McDonough turned around and said that Mikal Bridges better be Michael fucking Jordan for what we're about to give up here for this. So that makes it even worse when you know that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was was there, like literally was a son if you had said yes. So
yeah, I get it. But
a lot of fuck ups that year is what I'm saying.
I get it, but again, that's number 10 and number 11 versus number 1. And
I also think when it comes to DA too, I don't know, it's tough because DA did have all the physical traits of a guy who should be quote unquote dominating, right? I think a lot of his downfall came from his attitude
between the years.
Yeah, 100%.
Between the years, 100%.
It was all mental. If you put Book's drive, Luka's drive, whoever else you want to into DA's head, he's insane. Absolutely insane. And I think a lot of people were hoping that they could pull that out of him from the mental side of things because physically he was perfectly gifted to dominate this league.
But that's where I struggle, though, because a lot of draft experts brought up the motor thing, and it was dismissed by a lot of people because he had the physical traits, and you're saying, okay, you can get this out of him, but sometimes you can't. That was my concern.
They used a lot.
Like they wound up being right.
A large portion of that was also because of the Buffalo game. Let's be real about that. Because again, I watched every minute, and a lot of it right there. I never even once thought this kid had a motor problem. Not even once until the NBA scouts started uttering that shit, and I was just like, and I thought it was just like they're just trying to dissuade the Suns from taking DA. They want him to take it because they want him to go somewhere else. I didn't know, but because I just never saw it. I thought he had plenty good motor, a lot of 4th, 5th, 6th opportunities at the rim in terms of like getting the ball to himself and the effort that he showed. Like I just thought he was a solid player. It just, he got to the NBA and it was just like, you know what it reminds me of? It's like when I was in high school, our goal was to make it to America West Arena at the time, right? In our season, we're like, hey, if we can have a successful enough season where we get to the state tournament and we make it all the way to America West Arena, that would be the Final Four. And that's our goal, right? And then we beat St. Mary's ass by like in overtime. And I
you beat a team's ass in overtime.
We beat them by 10 in overtime. Okay, that's good enough. Anyway, and I remember like, oh my gosh, like we made it. We hit the Final Four. Never did I even think that like we could win the state championship, and then we appropriately went out and got our asses handed to us in the semifinals. And it was just like, damn, I wish I didn't have that mentality. I wish I would have just been like, I go hard all the time, doesn't matter. And I feel like DA. He reached his Final Four and he was like, yeah, I'm good. And he just kind of coasted. And then he got his shit kicked in a little bit. And then he went to and he got better during the bubble a little bit. And then obviously the run to the finals, I thought he played very well, especially in the playoffs. He turned it up when he could. And you felt like, oh man, maybe this is what we're going to get. And then he showed you again against the New Orleans Pelicans the next year in the playoffs. Like, okay, that DA is back. He played really well in that series. And then it all just disappeared. And I think that the ability for DA to take over games, to be a dominant force, to impose his will was just not evident. And that's what ends up killing him as the number 1 pick.
One last, Enslow in the chat brings up a good point. There were a lot of questions about Luka's attitude going into that draft.
No. There was
You're
one
claim
bullshit.
one person,
there was one bullshit freaking propaganda draft scout evaluation. Don't even bring that
There were
up.
a lot of questions that all came from one source.
Yeah, from one fucking propaganda Stop.
Okay, I do have a question.
We're not doing that.
How do you rank Shea and Luka? Obviously, both on the All NBA first team this year.
Luka's
Where do you
above Shea.
like right above Shea?
Luka's in the finals right
Yeah.
now.
I get
You
that,
gotta
but
give it
like
to him.
But-
Shea is also a
but
little younger, is he not?
Luka has been this dude
Or
for
no,
like
is it the
5
same?
years.
Luka and Nikola Jokic are like vying for the title of best player in the world.
get
I think
that.
Shea is not far from that conversation, but right now, Luka.
Yeah.
And by the way, I couldn't watch Luka during that time. I was too busy insulting you on Twitter, so that's why I was unaware
He's calling
of
me
his
names on
game. I was
Twitter.
calling you names
That's
at that
fair.
point. So.
All right.
25. So what are we gonna do?
I think listen. I will say franchise altering mistake,
They're the same age. I thought Shea was.
but
a
I
little
definitely
younger,
don't feel like he should be at the top of that list.
All right, can we?
I do.
my
So it's up to you, Espo and Lindsay, where you want to put him.
4 years ago, I
boy.
would have been arguing vehemently like Saul is. Now I've seen the error of my ways and I feel awful. Can we put him between Jalen Smith and Josh Jackson? Because you could argue you don't take sticks and you take Halliburton and there's a title, right?
Yeah.
You
Could
could argue
argue.
that for a lot.
Don't go there. I'm just I'm trying to pacify
That whole top tier could
Put
be
him wherever, but I just want the record to state this was the worst draft mistake they've ever made.
No,
100%.
not even close.
Yes,
No, not
because it
even
was
close.
number one,
No.
and he doesn't play for the franchise anymore. Like 5 seasons and out. Jalen Smith was a terrible pick. That might be the worst, like, just draft evaluation.
All
pick
those
you've
other
ever
guys
made.
didn't even last 5 seasons.
I get that.
But they weren't number one.
But Luka wasn't taken after them, and you could have had Luka, man.
Again, you're equating DeAndre Ayton to Sam Bowie, and I'm just not believing it.
I'm not.
Yeah, you are.
I'm not. I'm saying that the guy that they passed up is on like the Michael Jordan caliber of prospect that you passed on, and you probably shouldn't have done that.
But there was other teams that did too, though.
It doesn't make it better when you're the first one that does it, and the next one that does it is the fucking Sacramento Kings.
I'm just saying he wasn't as surefire a prospect as you're making it. out to
Ahoy
be.
hoy!
Should we flip a coin?
Do we want to curse for another 50
Maybe
Oh,
it'll,
3
maybe
years?
it'll change it. Maybe it'll reverse it.
Like I said, put him wherever you want. I'm
I
offering
don't
my
wanna play
opinion. That was the
anymore.
worst draft mistake to me that the Suns have made.
Can we
I
just
think there are
agree,
8 other ones on this list that are worse.
8.
can we just agree that 10-year stretch they just sucked at everything?
It was horrific.
like talent evaluation,
This
odd
is what
court.
we'll do. Should we put up a poll?
Oh, are we going to
Sure.
sit here for another 30 minutes?
In the
Oh,
Discord.
in the
Oh.
Discord.
And we'll officially place this tomorrow
Okay.
based on what the Discord says.
Okay.
We got to
Right.
drag this out to
No,
tomorrow.
We'll just real quick. We'll say here's our final list from yesterday's
You
show.
think it's going to go that quick?
Yes, because I'll make sure it goes that quick. I promise. We'll do that. We'll
I'm
let the
pretty sure-
diehards be the one who decide
All right.
where DA falls on our final tier.
Don't let me down,
Jacob's
diehards.
about to kill all of us. So
So if you want to be a diehard, now's a
great.
great time. You can vote on this. Go phnx.com. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us for this riveting.
I had fun.
I had fun until the DA part. I did. That's why I kept him for the last spot because I knew it was going to go downhill. Anyway, we appreciate you all. If you are a diehard, look for that vote in the Discord for diehards only. If you want to become a diehard, go phnx.com and we will update you with what they all say tomorrow at the top of the show. And until we see you then, hit that thumbs up button if you are here on YouTube, rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, give the show a follow on social at PHNX_Suns. You can also follow me at Lindsay Smith AZ. You can follow Saul at Saul_Bookman. You can follow Gerald at Gerald Bourget. And you can follow Espo at Espo. Espo, take us home.
Just remember, we chose this life, so we chose this depression. Ahoy hoy!
We all silly like the mayor.